Good morning, everybody. This is your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, a wandering author, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. Today, this is Nichols Ledge. I just dropped my pen. We're in maybe central western Vermont. And that's Nichols Pond down there that you guys are seeing. I did record a portion of this video earlier, way earlier. It's about 5 p.m. right now. About 9 o'clock this morning, I climbed a mountain called, it was inside of Camel Hump State Park. And so at this point, I think just before recording this video, I had 12 miles vertical distance walked, or horizontal distance walked, and over 167 floors covered. But as always, my message remains the same: spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. Today we are going to cover and touch on some of the concepts that Alan Watts talks about in his book, The Way of Zen, the Western philosopher who kind of breaks down some of the practical and spiritual aspects of Buddhism and its many flavors. So one of the most difficult aspects is, much like Western philosophies and religions, there's lots of different strains. Now, with Buddhism, you've got two major strains, the Theravada and the Mahayana. The Theravada means like the school of the elders. The Mahayana means the great vehicle. Zen Buddhism is basically, the way Alan Watts explains it is it's a secular derivation of Mahayana Buddhism. And he goes into the way it developed. It interacted with some of the philosophical elements from the yogas. So the Yoga Sutras and the original yogi practicers were spiritual people. They chose one of 3 or one of 4 paths of yoga. Karma yoga, the path of action, the path of devotion, jhana, and another one, the path of something, love. Anyways, in the Tao Te Ching, which is from Taoism, the opening words of the oldest Zen poem say, "The perfect way, the Tao, is without difficulty. Only when you stop liking and disliking will all be clearly understood." The point is not to overexert and exhaust yourself trying to silence the feelings and cultivate equanimity. It's to see through the universal illusion of what is pleasure and what is bad, which ties back in with what we've been discussing as far as Aristotle. He's mentioned several times in the Nicomachean Ethics how the entire point of an education is to teach somebody what is good and what is bad, and to like and dislike the right things. And what the Tao is saying is, when you do like and dislike the right things, that things are effortless. Which I agree. Typically, we're deceived by pleasures. And Taoism juxtaposes opposites in the Tao Te Ching. And this is an area that I think there's a little bit of a difference with Western philosophy. So, most Eastern philosophies utilize a concept, some flavor of non-duality, whereas most Western philosophies seek to define everything in terms of subject and viewer. Non-duality just tells us that there cannot be an object that's viewed without the subject, so these things are kind of intertwined. And they have some good poems in the Tao Te Ching that kind of explain that a little more fluently. So here we go, quoting, "When everyone recognizes beauty as beautiful, there is already ugliness. When everyone recognizes goodness as good, there is already evil." And what they're saying isn't that good things are evil if everybody recognizes them. It's that you can't recognize good unless you can also recognize evil, because it's only when they're two sides of the same coin, when they're put together, that's the only way that we can recognize them. Which is very similar to Aristotle's point when he talks about the golden mean, and how virtues or excellence, goodness of all kinds, exists on a spectrum. And they're the presence or absence, excess or deficiency of different traits that make something good. Human experience is determined as much by the nature of the mind and the structure of its senses as by the external sense objects whose presence the mind reveals. Okay, so this is another again, going in on the differences between Eastern and Western thought with the non-duality train. Because our minds are intimately involved with what they're sensing, here's a good way to put it that a Western perspective might go understand pretty well, is you got to pay attention to what you listen to and the stuff that you feed your soul, because those things matter, right? That's more from a Christian perspective, but all they're saying is that the environment does influence us, and even from a modern psychoanalytic perspective, we understand that environmental stimuli do have long-term impacts on personality structures and coping mechanisms and other similar concepts. Again, I'm no expert. I'm just trying to help with the translations, right? Non-duality, symbolic thought. In the West, we use alphanumeric characters. These are symbols that really encourage us to think in linear terms and make it harder for us to understand the non-dual point of view, although it is definitely possible for us to understand it. From a young age, Westerners are taught alphanumeric writing systems, strengthening this natural tendency to separate and compartmentalize ourselves from the external environment. All of us have grown up with these narratives in our head where we are the heroes or victims in a story where I is the main character, right? And our language strengthens this, especially in the West. But we've got to recognize, and the Eastern philosophies really point out how all of this stuff is an illusion, which we see similar strains of thought in the West too. Zen points out that the self is just an idea, so that the I in your head whenever you're telling your narrative, it's just an idea. And when you really appreciate that it's just an idea, this realization creates a profound change in someone's relationship with the world. This also eliminates the subjective distinction between you and your experience, uniting them into a unified whole. So you stop becoming somebody who is receiving your experience, whatever's happening to me, whether it's good or bad, oh, I'm winning or oh, I'm losing, and you start to just be an observer of your experience. You are the experience. You're not someone who's experiencing it. The experience is who you are, right? The I is only a small sub-portion or sub-compartment of yourself as such. Social convention, language, and cultural norms all encourage the association of ourselves with the ideas that we have of us. In Western thought, Heraclitus kind of mentions a similar strain of thought, whatever he talks about becoming, where he says that nothing is static, everything changes, and that the nature of anything, including humans, is to be coming. We're not static, which is contrasted with being. Our true conceptual self is already a bodhisattva, or Buddha body, in the Eastern strain of thought. And Zen philosophy also emphasizes both natures of every experience. This is similar to Plato's theory on learning, where he talks about a priori knowledge. One of Plato's ideas is that when somebody, and Aristotle builds on this, but that when we learn something, we're not really learning it. It's already something that we know. We're just remembering it. A priori knowledge. So meaning everybody possesses all the wisdom in the world. We just have to remember it first. Now, the etymology of the word Zen, it's a transliteration of the Sanskrit word dhyana, or in English, meditation. And it's got a few underlying themes that make it distinct from other strains of Buddhism. One is it emphasizes self-restraint, which is a virtue for the Stoics and for Aristotle, temperance. Meditation, which is another Stoic practice, although they call it contemplative practice. And that's the whole reason why Marcus Aurelius has his book Meditations in the first place. Insight into true knowledge, which is of self, kinsho, that's the word in Japanese, and then favors the understanding through spiritual practice under the guidance of a teacher, which Aristotle mentions that intellectual virtues could be taught by a teacher. Again, Maine's been really cool, actually. So obviously, we're here. I walked 5 miles uphill up a mountain earlier today, and then 5 miles back down it. But everybody's been super friendly. I walked through these two towns. One of them I remember the name off the top of my head, Stowe. And they seem like very cool, quaint, small towns. lots of lakes and stuff around here, very alpine environment. So now let's zoom back out and look at Buddhism as a whole instead of just Zen. So there's two major extant branches as recognized by modern philosophers. Theravada, which I mentioned earlier, the school of the elders, and Mahayana, or the great vehicle. All of the schools of Buddhism utilize some version of the Noble Eightfold Path. Sometimes they divide it into 3 sets of 3, but there is, which is it's similar to the matrix of virtues that Aristotle lays out in his Nicomachean Ethics in a lot of ways too. A key tenet of the Eightfold Path is the middle way, which is just basically straight up Aristotle's the golden mean. Buddha says that you've got to approach everything from the middle. And then the full Eightfold Path, which we could go into all of these and we will, is number 1 is right view, 2 right resolve, 3 right speech, 4 right conduct, 5 right livelihood, 6 right effort, 7 right mindfulness, and 8 right samadhi, or meditation, equanimity. Early Buddhist teachings tell us that the mind-body works in a corrupted way, which is pretty common amongst all of the philosophies, East and West, is just that, like, basically the way that we perceive the world naturally is in some way delusional, or our senses are lying to us. For them, they say that it's corrupted. And just, if we take the 3 groups, if we group the further subdivisions of the Noble Eightfold Path, we'll go over the first 3, which belong to Sila, or the virtues class, because it's similar to, in a lot of ways, to what we've studied with Aristotle. Number 1, right view. So according to the Noble Eightfold Path, we have to recognize that our actions have consequences even after death, and this is karma. Now, from everything that I've read for them, it's less of like the spiritual Christian style eternal afterlife, but more like the butterfly effect type of, like, if you do anything in this world, it's going to have ripples throughout time. Even after you die, the things that you did while you were alive will still be having ripple effects on everything. 2 is right resolve, or intention. I love that word too. The giving up of home and adopting the life of religious mendicant in order to follow the path into an environment of non-ill will, away from cruelty, into compassion. So basically cultivating the right kind of environment, which means cultivating an environment that is supportive and compassionate, not towards just each other, but towards all living creatures, according to their perspective. And man, it is pretty warm out here, ain't it? And again, many of these concepts are similar to what we've seen in like equanimitas, justice, which is supposed to be, that's more human-centric, guys find in the West. Right speech. No lying, no rude speech, no telling one person what another says about him to cause discord or harm their relationship. In the original Sanskrit, it was more about a disposition that promoted social harmony. And then the final group is meditation, or samadhi, and insight, wisdom. And the whole goal, remember, is to end the cycle of suffering, or samsara. So, again, I'm definitely not an expert, but that is my contribution for today. This is a wandering author coming at you from Nichols Ledge in central western Vermont, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. What are you guys doing in order to inspire, uplift, and empower your communities today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part, and you can count on me to do mine daily. Until next time, I love y'all.